I just got a Roomba. Have you guys ever had one of those?
I haven't, but I'm aware of the concept, and yeah.
Oh, it's a lifesaver. Like that thing literally just. I mean, I know that's what it's supposed to do, but it literally just cleans as you're like chilling. And you don't have to worry about it. Like I have a dog, man. That's a pain in the ass having to go through and like vacuum the rugs and sweep, and then you go back to right where you just swept, and it looks like you never swept because dog hair just floats around everywhere. But the Roomba is amazing. The only thing is my dog attacks it, so I have to be here while he's doing it, or else I feel like I'm going to come home and it's going to be in pieces one time. I don't know. It's like that and air fryers. Like it's like all this technological advancements is just making improvements in my life, but I'm like 5 years behind all of them.
Air fryers and Roombas are why your life's improving?
Oh, God, by leaps and bounds. By leaps and bounds.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have a dog, so the Roomba really wouldn't do anything for me. But I vacuum like once every 2 months. So I don't, I mean, I probably should vacuum more than that. But yeah, I don't feel the need to get a Roomba.
Yeah.
Adam, do you have one of those things? It's like, just makes like a huge improvement in your lifestyle, like a Roomba or an air fryer?
Not that comes to mind, but the fact that those two things are like so technologically advanced for you, you might be on the same like stone boomer level as I am, because there's a lot more high tech stuff going on out there than that.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, they're coming up with what Google glasses and stuff, and I'm sitting here talking about air fryers, which are improving my life so much. All right, let's go ahead and get this show rolling. Y'all ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
This is Fantasy Intervention. Now here to intervene with your fantasy life, Shane Manila, Jacob Sanderson, and Chase Vernon.
What's going on, guys? Welcome on to another episode of Fantasy Intervention, coming at you quick, fast, and in a hurry. Yes, I am sitting here and I am joined by Shane is the Worst, who you guys heard in the intro. What's going on, Shane? How you doing tonight?
I'm great. Excited to be on with you on a Wednesday because you got an awesome guest. Otherwise, I wouldn't be on with you. I'm not gonna lie.
I figured that. Yeah. I mean, I don't even know if I would invite you on at this point. I mean, I was a little bit nervous bringing this special guest on, of course, who we're about to announce in a second, but I had to have my back and support there with me. So thanks for coming on, Shane. Really appreciate you. Of course, you guys can tune in and hear Jacob, Shane, and myself every Tuesday. We're there at 8 o'clock Eastern time. You guys can find us on youtube.com/fantasy intervention. But yes, we have a very, very special guest in the building. One of my favorite analysts in all of fantasy football. We got Adam Levitan in the house. What's going on, Adam? How you doing, man?
Hey, yeah, doing well. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Adam, do you want to let all of those negligent people who don't pay attention to fantasy football, who might not know who you are, actually know who you are and what you do and what you're about?
Yeah, it's a complicated question. I was at Roto World for a long time, from roughly 2007 to 2015. And then I kind of left Roto World in 2015 to play DFS full time and work with DraftKings and work with Fantasy Labs. And then in 2019, I established a run with Evan Silva, who I'm sure most of you know. And since then, I've basically just been working on that and kind of trying to do the best that we can with that. So yeah, that's kind of where it's at now.
Dude, absolutely love it, man. Of course, huge shout out to Taylor in the chat. If you guys have any questions that y'all want to ask Adam, please go ahead and line them up and we will get to them throughout the show. Adam, you recently had a solo pod, right?
Mhm.
From Establish to Run, which is something that I don't think I've ever heard you do. Is solo pods new for you, or is this just something
Oh.
I've missed out on?
No, I normally only do them during the season. I do it every week during the season, probably for the last I don't know, probably 5 years. I've done one a week during the season. I hardly ever do them in the off season, but yeah, I like doing them just to. I normally do them to like recap the week and like really be super self-loathing on decisions that I made and stuff like that. And then also just kind of say what I think is funny, and people ask funny questions, and we have a whole bit going on with all kinds of different things with the solo pod. But no, yeah, I do them during the season once a week. I actually really like doing them. It's actually a lot of fun.
So, I mean, one of the things that you talked about obviously was moving to Denver. So I guess you're moving to Denver now.
Correct.
And then one of the other things you talked about was, I guess your other company that you specialize in, and I was told to ask about it. So we talked about it a little bit pre-show. What's that company? What's it about? And is it legitimate, or what's going on with it?
Of course it is. Yeah. Gender Labs LLC, aka Gender Consultants. Yeah. Basically what we do is we help people conceive their preferred gender. And so if you want a boy or if you want a girl, that's kind of the core business. We can give you the data and the materials that you need, the various launch angles and exit velocity and stuff like that. And then, for an extra fee, we can do an in-home consultation where we actually coach you through the actual moment of conception so that you can have your desired gender. So yeah, it's very real. And we've kind of branched off to other data. People have asked us to do studies on the effects of intercourse on player performance and all kinds of other things. So yeah, we continue to expand.
Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Big shout out to Jacob who wanted me to throw that question in there for you. So, sitting there looking at it, if you guys actually do want to ask Adam some questions, please line them up in the group chat. And of course, if you're somebody that, wants to support the show, please go onto Twitter and give this a retweet. So that way we make sure we get everybody in here. Tell everybody that Adam's on with us talking about the gender neutral labs, and he can actually help you guys out. So I was listening to your show the other day, Adam, and you were sitting there and you were talking about how you actually like to get your hands dirty, right, in the backyard. You were taking care of landscaping while everybody else is putting together spreadsheets and trying to figure out what's going to happen 3 months from now. You're actually getting work done, right? So he's paying attention to the tendencies, right, to the news, everything that's going on. And sitting there and looking at it, like, do you actually pay attention to anything for DFS at this time of year, or is it pretty much all just a wash outside of some of the news and staying up to date with what's going on?
No. I think you were thinking of Evan, who was out there getting his hands dirty.
I apologize.
Yeah, I think there's a really big advantage to following it all year round versus showing up in August or September and trying to be ready to play. I mean, DFS is just incredibly competitive. It's only getting more and more competitive every year, and showing up in September and trying to win that way without understanding what's been going on all off season, I think is asking for trouble. I mean, teams are explaining what they think about players, not what their words. Like, I don't care what a beat writer thinks about a player or what a coach says about a player, but when a coach makes a move or a lack thereof of a move, it says a lot about what they think about a certain player. And then I think the depth chart stuff and injury stuff to follow throughout the summer is interesting as well. So no, I mean, I think being into it all year round, 365 days a year, if you're going to play seriously in the fall is pretty much like, I mean, baseline.
I mean, Shane, are you feeling like the same sort of way when it comes to this stuff? Because I know that you don't follow a lot of the team news as much, but you still stay up to date with it to an extent. I mean, how are you feeling about news this time of year?
I don't care about most of it. I mean, like, honestly, if something comes out big, obviously I'm going to care. But when the news is Matt Nagy said that Andy Dalton's the starter, okay. You might as well name me the starter right now. Like, that holds the same weight to me. But, I mean, if it's big news, obviously I'll pay attention to it. When there's news like Antonio Gibson's foot still isn't feeling right and it's June 16th and he missed time last year, all right, well, then I'm going to pay attention to that news, and that's probably going to make me a little weary of him. Luckily, playing in Dynasty, obviously, it's a little different. I'm looking at it longer term, but even still with the running back, like I don't want a running back that's got a foot issue 3 months out to the season when, he had that issue last year.
So is that a reference towards Antonio Gibson and his toe
not
being clear, right?
What did I call him? I said Antonio Gibson. I said his foot. He's got the turf toe, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And turf toe, and that's a terrible name for it too, because from what I understand, it's a horribly painful condition. And turf toe just sounds like so benign. Like, oh, you have turf toe. Just put some dirt on it, rub it on there, and get out there. But yeah, that was a nod to his foot not being right yet.
What about like hamstring injuries and stuff like Johnny Smith suffered possibly the other day? Or is that just a wash because it's just a hamstring?
I think it's a wash because it's Juno Smith. I guess if you like Juno Smith, like if you were into him this year, that would affect you a little bit. But it is a hammy. It's still 3 months out from the season, right? So unless it's like a grade 3, that thing should be healed up by the time they meet up for their final OTAs before the preseason kicks off.
No, absolutely. I mean, if we're sitting there, right, and we're looking at some of these running backs, like we talked about with Antonio Gibson, they're kind of like almost in the same spot draft position wise, especially the guys that kind of earned their yards or their fantasy points on the ground last year. I mean, sitting there and looking at it, was it the Rams targeted the running back 12.6% of the time when it came to Cam Akers and his usage in the passing game? It just wasn't there. That was 30th in the NFL. Washington, right? Like Antonio Gibson could not pass block because he played wide receiver. So sitting there looking at Antonio Gibson, not only does he have the toe issue, but will he actually see, receptions on third downs or see snaps on third downs? And then we have, J.K. Dobbins, who got the majority of his work on the ground as well. I feel like they all have a chance to actually see significant upticks in usage for different areas. But with that being said, with their situations, do you think any of them really changed significantly enough that it could put them into that RB1 category? I'm going to start with you, Adam.
Oh, I mean, Antonio Gibson, my God, he could easily finish as a top 5 player in fantasy this year if he does indeed unlock the pass game role. We already knew that he was going to be really good as a receiver because that's what he excelled at Memphis. We didn't know if he'd be able to run between the tackles. As a rookie, he answered the question about running the football effectively. So what's left? Well, what's left is what we already knew what he could do. I think he'll be fine on third downs. And I think they know that without Alex Smith in there checking down constantly, that they need someone more explosive who can run more routes. And so I think we're going to see a lot more Antonio Gibson in the pass game this year. And I think the Washington football team is going to be way, way, way better. And Ryan Fitzpatrick will make everybody way, way, way more efficient. And all their ADOTs are going to be longer. And Antonio Gibson is going to benefit from more red zone chances. And I think out of those I think we have them in tier 3 maybe, but out of those kind of group of running backs there, Antonio Gibson is my favorite of the guys who are like the CEH, Chubb, Swift, Carson, Miles Sanders types. Antonio Gibson would be my favorite.
Shane, what you got on that?
Yeah, it just worries me a little bit that he didn't see much work in the passing game last year, but we know he can do it, which just the thought process behind not using him in that role scares me a little bit. Like, I hope that it doesn't carry over in the year 2. Because obviously we saw he can pass. He's an excellent receiver. He played receiver in college. But we know it's in there. We talked a lot about J.K. Dobbins last night, I think. I don't see the receiving volume ever being there. And I see Gus Edwards, unfortunately, taking too much work from him for him to really be a top 5 back. Cam Akers, he's too expensive for me. He's like the RB8 in Dynasty. I don't know what he is in best ball or redraft, but I'm going to guess it's too high for my taste. He looked good in the playoffs. He looked really good in the playoffs, but I'm still a little concerned about him. I didn't see enough of him to say, oh yeah, this guy's a smash RB1.
What if Antonio Gibson passes up Cam Akers in draft capital?
I'd still take Gibson over Akers. Gibson is a more complete running back, which is hilarious because he was a receiver. But we know that he has that in his wheelhouse. Like I'm hoping that Gibson's going to see something like 80, 90 targets. Whatever. Jesus, I can't even remember the other running back thing.
Yeah, J.D. McKissic.
Jesus, why can't I remember McKissick's name? I don't even want to. It's like I blocked it out.
Yeah.
Because he's got 15 targets in that Alex Smith game, and it was like, why? Why do they keep doing this? But that's who I'd like to see with 80, 90 targets is Antonio Gibson and not J.D. McKissic. Like Adam said, I want to see the more explosive guy. Like McKissic is fine. He can catch the ball and then fall, but get the ball in Gibson's hands and let him do some work. So, yeah, I like Gibson more than Akers, even if his ADP were to move up.
Gibson's such like a bowling ball type player. I mean, what is he, like 6 foot, like 228? This dude, if he finds open space up against a safety, he's running over him. If he finds open space up against a linebacker, he's going to run past him. And to sit there and think about the fact that he didn't get opportunity in the pass game, it has to be due to the fact that he did not have the opportunity to spend the offseason in OTAs learning how to pass block, learning how to chip and how to get to the outside, after he chips. And I feel like that could be attributed to the lack of passing work in this offense. However, when we look at Ryan Fitzpatrick, he doesn't pass a lot to the running back. Like he doesn't check down. He doesn't really use the tight end. And when we were sitting at it, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but I mean, he did well with Gesicki, but that's about it. So it makes me a little bit nervous for Antonio Gibson and the passing down work that he could end up seeing. But let's go ahead and move on from that aspect and talk about if there's any one of these second-year running backs that are significantly above these other ones. If there's anyone that is significantly lower when it comes to Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, Jonathan Taylor, Antonio Gibson, and CH. Is there anybody that stands out or, is pretty much in that bottom tier for you guys, or a further tier down than what the other groupings are?
Yeah. I mean, I think Jonathan Taylor is going to continue to lose some work to Naheem Hines, and we know Marlon Mack's going to be back also. But from a raw talent perspective, I mean, gosh, it's really hard to ignore Jonathan Taylor. And I do think that Carson Wentz has a pretty reasonable chance at a bounce back with the Bible narrative going with Frank Reich and getting back it with a more reasonable offensive line for him. I mean, he was just like, when he got under pressure and he held the ball so long last year, I think Frank Reich will have him not doing that. And so I think there'll be plenty of scoring chances for Jonathan Taylor. I mean, to me, he's clearly ahead of those guys. I think it sounds like I like Cam Akers a little bit more than you guys, but yeah, Jonathan Taylor, to me, no doubt, is out of those guys is the best.
All right, Shane, do you have one that's lower than everybody else?
Lower than everyone else? Apparently Cam Akers. I'm lower on Cam Akers than everyone else, it seems. But I just need to put it out there. I don't think Cam Akers is bad by any stretch of the imagination. It's just compared to the other backs. Did CEH show us enough? I guess no. I mean, honestly, it's a really good group of running backs. It's like, yeah, Jonathan Taylor is one, and then I'd have Swift right below him. And then I kind of have CEH and Akers and Dobbins kind of all in that same little area where I would just grab whoever's cheapest if they're still on the board for me.
I'll take that. Now, there's one running back that I think is completely undervalued, and it's not a second-year back. But this player, oh, man, he was on track to do, magical things. If we're sitting there, we're looking at DFS-wise, I was picking him up most weeks because he was just dominating. He had 6 weeks of the 12 games that he played where he gave you 18.8 plus DraftKings points. He was just mowing people over, but there was a different element to his game this season than I think we've ever seen, and that was Chris Carson. Chris Carson got involved in the passing work. It was, I think he tied his career high in receptions, or at least was very close. And he only played, like we said, 12 games. Is Chris Carson tremendously undervalued right now, or is he somebody that's properly valued? And you just kind of got to take that risk. Typically, these running backs who go in rounds 4 through 6 or 7, they normally miss because they're either on the downturn of their trajectory career, or maybe they have a part-time role. I don't know if that's either one for Chris Carson. Adam, how are you feeling about Chris Carson this season?
Yeah, I thought Seattle made, and the kind of news that I'm talking about to pay attention to is contract stuff and personnel. And it was very clear that Seattle wanted Chris Carson back. They did not have to pay Chris Carson what they did. I thought they might just let Chris Carson walk. They decided not to and gave him a really sizable contract at the running back position. So they very clearly like Chris Carson. Also, Rashad Penny, news came out today. Rashad Penny had another cleanup on his right knee, which has been bothering him since he blew it out in December of 2019. So, yeah, I think there's a lot going for Chris Carson. I think Shane Waldron will be more creative and hopefully let Russ cook more, which I think will be good for Chris Carson. In general, I agree with you. I think he's a good player. The concern has always been that they have not shown the commitment to really saddle up Chris Carson for 20, 25, 30 touches. I don't know if his body can really withstand that anyways. So I'm fine with Chris Carson. I think he's valued, I would say, appropriately right now, somewhere in the range there with Swift and Miles Sanders. And I'd probably have him a little bit ahead of Mike Davis, but somewhere in that range there. And I'd also take Chris Carson ahead of J.K. Dobbins too.
Ooh. Oh, damn. Okay. I'll take that.
I mean, in redraft, yeah. This is why I hate redraft, because I have to do things like agree that I would take Chris Carson over J.K. Dobbins, and that crushes me on the inside because J.K. Dobbins is such a superior athlete and player. But that's one of these cases where the situation is so extreme that it does affect that. Yeah, Carson's a guy that's kind of undervalued or underappreciated every year. We keep waiting for him to get his job taken from him. We were telling ourselves in Dynasty this year, or prior to the end of the last year, buy Rashad Penny because Seattle's going to let Chris Carson walk. No way they bring him back. And like Adam said, they brought him back and they gave him the second highest free agent contract, guaranteed money for running backs this offseason. So they like him. And yeah, and Penny can't stay healthy. I mean, it's a shame. So what else do they have out there? DJ Dallas?
Yeah, and Travis Homer.
Travis Homer.
And you know what? Travis Homer probably isn't bad as a little change of pace back, right? But I don't think he's any significant threat to Chris Carson, and I don't think DJ Dallas is. Chris Carson, yeah, it's his health is usually his biggest concern because he runs like an absolute madman, like with no regard for his physical well-being.
Hey, I love to watch it too. Love to watch. He just throws his body forward every time. It's very similar like Damian Williams, where it's just fun to watch.
It is fun to watch, except again when you own him in Dynasty, and you're like, dude, I need you to last for like 2 years at least. Can you not die this season? Like not in this game. I know those 2 yards are important, but they're not that important.
No, I mean, I think that a lot of people use him as like a floor example, and that was kind of me too up until I did some research on him. And I mean, his ceiling is through the roof. And although he might have quote unquote bust weeks, those bust weeks aren't like, 5 fantasy points. Those bust weeks are still 8, 9, 10, 12 fantasy points. So I think he's actually very reliable with a pretty high ceiling. Like I said, 6 out of his 12 games he played last year, he gave you at least 18.8 points on DraftKings. So I think that he could definitely have some significant upside, and his ceiling is a lot higher than what people are giving him credit for. I love him for 2021, especially at where he's going. But I mean, why is nobody talking about Carlos Hyde and the fact that he could steal snaps down there in Jacksonville? I'm just kidding. We're not talking about that. I want to stick with the same team. I want to talk about Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett, obviously, like when you studied DFS, right? You almost knew when you could play Tyler Lockett and when you couldn't. There are certain players where you can't, like, you could literally throw shit at a wall and see if it sticks. That's not the case with Tyler Lockett. You pretty much played Tyler Lockett whenever he played up against a weak slot guy. And if they had a smaller, less athletic outside guy, then you would play DK Metcalf. It was almost like clockwork to an extent. I was sitting there and I was looking at, some of the ways that Russell Wilson plays. And Russell Wilson loves to play his matchups. Like we saw when he played up against slower linebacking cores, he would find Chris Carson on a regular basis underneath time and time again, especially when they went into cover 4 essentially, or even cover 3 to an extent. But Tyler Lockett this season, he obviously got, a 4-year extension, so he's going to be part of this team for the next 4 years, at least 3 years minimum. Is he a player that you actually want to go out and acquire? Or is Tyler Lockett just like an afterthought at this point? Like, can you trust Tyler Lockett? He gets hurt all the time. Like, there's always so many different variables with him. But when you know that you have him, you know that he's healthy, you can play him. Is he somebody that you're targeting at him or somebody that you're just going to let slip past at his ADP?
No, I like Tyler Lockett. I thought last year, he was on his way to an absolutely massive year until he hurt his knee. And after that, he was out there playing, but you could tell he was not right. I don't think he had a 100-yard game or anywhere close to it in the last, 9 or 10 weeks of the season. And, I agree with what you said about the matchups, but even in good matchups, he was failing at the end of last year. And I think it was due to the knee. I hope it was due to the knee. The Seahawks obviously thought it was due to the knee because they gave him a big contract. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that if you can write off a lot of the context around what happened late last year and put it into the context of he wasn't right, then yeah, Tyler Lockett's going to be a buy this year for sure. I mean, the other thing that happened was just Seahawks just stopped letting Russ cook. So, I think Shane Waldron will at least have some better say than Brian Schottenheimer did. They brought him in there, and Shane Waldron comes from McVay, obviously. And so I think there'll be some more merit to let Russ cook all year type stuff. And obviously that would be really good for Tyler Lockett.
I mean, in 2019, we saw something similar, right? Where he had the thigh contusion or whatever it was. And like he sucked for another like 6 games. And it always happens. It's like almost like Anquan Bolden where he'll sit there and he'll play through injuries. He'll get beat the fuck up. He'll play through injuries. But he's not very good when he's playing through injuries. Now, it's good for the rest of the offense.
That's the worst. I mean, I'd rather guys just sit, because, it's really bad, especially for season long. I don't play much season long or anything, but if you do, like, it just sucks. Like, I'm not benching Tyler Lockett, but he plays same with Julio. Like, they play when they're hurt, and then you end up with air balls,
Shane, are you somebody that's looking to acquire Tyler Lockett, or is he just an afterthought at this point?
He's cheap, so anyone that's cheap, I'm looking to acquire, and he's got week winning weeks in him. Yeah, whatever, how that goes. He's a guy that anybody that can put up 40 points in a week and can do it more than once, that's a guy I want to own. And again, in Dynasty, he's cheap. No one likes him. Everyone's telling you that he's injured too often, that, DK has surpassed him. Seattle doesn't throw the ball enough. And I mean, okay, but yeah, they have a new offensive coordinator. And honestly, the only thing that stopped their offense last year was them. They decided that they didn't like throwing as much anymore, and they wanted to shut Russ down. So I still like Lockett. I mean, he's really cheap, and he's the 2 on that team now. I think it's, DK Metcalf has surpassed him in most people's eyes. So you can get him for fairly cheap. So yeah, I'm good with Lockett.
First off, Cooter, you missed the mustache last night, okay? You missed the mustache. It was glorious. You missed out on it, but it's okay. Second off, Shane, did you just make a reference towards a coaching staff and the plays that could be called? I heard you say that they have a new offensive coordinator.
Again, in extremes, right? we look at what they had before and what they have now. We have an offensive coordinator that we think is going to be a little more inventive, a little more maybe pass a little more often.
You mean extremely more inventive.
I don't like being that hyperbolic. You know me, I'm pretty measured. But yeah. Look, I like Lockett a lot. He's a guy, like I said, you can get him for second rounders in dynasty leagues, and a second round pick is not going to match the production you'll ever get from Tyler Lockett. Value is a whole other subject because it's not tied to the production, but I'll make that trade all day, every day.
I mean, what if you could get Rondell Moore with an early second rounder? Because that's who we got up next. I mean, we'll talk about it. Another like diminutive receiver, right? Somebody that's a little bit smaller, has a weird track record of injuries. We don't really know what happened this past year, if he stayed out to train, for the combine or, train for his pro days. Rondell Moore is somebody who's very interesting. He's obviously going to play second fiddle to DeAndre Hopkins, but he's still somebody that could see 7 targets a game, 8 targets a game, possibly. Kyler Murray and him can have that short man eye contact going on. We never know what could happen. Are we investing in Rondell Moore? Do we think that he can break 70 receptions, or is AJ Green going to be too much of a target hog in this offense?
Look, just remember, AJ Green had 100 targets last year, right? Targets clearly follow the player. Those were earned targets, I'm sure. So they're going to follow him out to the desert. Again, Dynasty, you're paying a 204, 205 for him in Superflex leagues, and you look at your choices. Yeah, I'm good with that. He's cheap. I'm worried about his injury history. I am. Like, we really haven't seen him do much since his freshman season. But for his price, again, second rounder, 205 in this draft class, which is a weak draft class as is, I'm good with that. And I might even slide up if I needed to.
So who are you taking, Rondell Moore or Tyler Lockett?
Tyler Lockett. I mean, I think Rondell Moore is going to be okay. I think Rondell Moore can get healthy enough to stay on the field in the NFL. I don't have any evidence of it, and his upside isn't, say, Jamar Chase, where I'm willing to risk it, where Tyler Lockett has a lot more upside, and I've seen some evidence of what he can do.
How you feeling about that, Adam?
Yeah, we have Tyler Lockett 59th in Dynasty right now for 1 QB, and we have Rondale Moore higher, I believe 43rd. Yeah, 43rd right now. I think, our big thing on Dynasty is like our opponents are not weighting age enough. And so if you are all in on 21-year-old receivers who we think are really good athletes in the long run, I think that's a better way to play than to go for Tyler Lockett, who I believe is going to be 29 pretty soon. And so, I agree with you that if I was playing to win this year, obviously it's no brainer. If I was playing to win next year, it's almost certainly Tyler Lockett. If I'm building a team for the long term in a startup, though, I'm taking Rondale Moore there 10 times out of 10.
I like that. I'm high on Rondale Moore. I'm very high. I wasn't as high up until the landing spot, but landing spot for me, I absolutely love it. Arizona, they don't use a lot of pre-snap motion. He's going to be playing the slot. He's going to be able to beat his guy off the line. As soon as they snap the ball, I think they're going to get him a ton of targets. I think that Rondale Moore has potential to easily eclipse 70 receptions this upcoming season in his rookie year. So he's one of my first year rookie breakout candidates. Now, let's talk about another set of rookies because, well, not even set. Let's talk about another rookie who's going right around the same area as him. We have Rashad Bateman. And Rashad Bateman seems to be really, really high up on people's, draft boards or really, really low. For me personally, I can't get behind him. He struggles to catch the ball from time to time. His route running is solid, but I don't love it. Like, there's nothing about him that I love. And he almost reminds me a little bit of like a Josh Doxson-esque type player. What are your thoughts on Rashad Bateman, Adam? And who would you take, Rashad Bateman or Rondale Moore?
Yeah, so I don't consider myself much of a prospect analyst, but people that I really trust think that Bateman is one of the cleanest wide receiver prospects to come into the league in a while from a age-adjusted dominator perspective, from what you look for from an analytics perspective, market share of his team's catches and touchdowns and yards, and what age he did it at. So, the landing spot I think is obviously not ideal. This is going to be the most run-heavy team in the NFL, almost certainly. They still have Mark Andrews. They added Sammy Watkins. They still have Marquise Brown. Landing spot is scary. I think in Dynasty, people can wrap themselves into trouble by overweighting landing spot. We never know what's going to change. We have no idea. Bills can go from being a run-heavy team to being the second most pass-happy team adjusted for game script in the entire NFL. And Josh Allen can be way better than anybody thinks. And I'm not saying Lamar Jackson can take that leap, but yeah, so from just a raw prospect perspective without the landing spot, I thought I would have taken Rashad Bateman very, very, very high. Right now, we have Rashad Bateman 9th in rookie drafts and Rondale Moore 6th. So we're a little bit higher on Rondale Moore, but I think you can get Rashad Bateman really cheap. People just don't want any piece of the Baltimore pass game. So he's really, really cheap. I think he's probably a good buy low before we even see him play a snap.
Well, plus they got Sammy Watkins there, who's probably going to garner 80% target share probably, from that offense. So, and Marquise Brown is pretty much going to take everyone to the house. So I don't know if there's going to be the volume, on top of them running so much that, literally every time Marquise Brown touches the ball, it's going for 6. So Shane, how are you feeling about Rashad Bateman? Do you think he has over under 5 catches this year with Sammy Watkins and Marquise Brown dominating?
So I love Rashad Bateman, and I've almost completely talked myself out of being worried about the landing spot because what we've seen the Ravens do is continually keep trying to bring in receivers, which tells me they want to throw the ball. They're spending high draft capital on receivers. They've spent a couple first-round picks in the last couple of years and a couple third-round picks, and then they just signed Sammy Watkins for whatever that's worth. But they clearly want to throw the ball. And Bateman, like Adam said, he was actually a great college prospect. He broke out at 18. He was above the baseline regression for market share, receiving yards every year he was in college. He destroyed Tyler Johnson's Devi stock, who was looking like he was going to be a first-round NFL pick before Bateman took his job. I love Bateman. Like I said, the landing spot's not great, but whatever. Situations change. If Lamar Jackson can become a little bit better of a passer, if they're a little more high volume, there's no reason that Bateman can't be better than Moore. Moore is cheaper, obviously, in most of the drafts I've done, but I would take Bateman straight up easily.
Yeah, Bateman's going first round in a lot of rookie drafts for single quarterback. When it's two quarterbacks, he's going in the beginning of the second. But yeah, I definitely take Rondo Moore over him. And obviously Hollywood Brown is leaps and bounds over Bateman, right? Bueller? I know Shane doesn't think so. Adam, how are you feeling about how Hollywood this year? Is he going to be efficient enough? I mean, he finished up over the last 6 or 7 games of the season last year as wide receiver 13. He had a touchdown, I believe, in almost every game over the last 6 or 7 games. It was kind of crazy. Although he finished out as wide receiver 13, he did not have a single wide receiver 1 performance over that time. He was just overly consistent and getting touchdowns every week. So I actually couldn't believe that up until I saw it recently. So is Hollywood Brown somebody that we can somewhat trust? Is he somebody that we want to have on our rosters? Is he just a DFS option? What's going on with Hollywood?
Yeah, I actually I got into a bunch of bets last year because I was really lower than market on Hollywood Brown. And I had a bunch of bets, Will Fuller versus Hollywood Brown, because they had about the same ADP in season long last year. And I actually won that, even though Will Fuller was suspended and missed the last 5 games of the season. So that was pretty amazing. Those like end of year wide receiver 13 or whatever, that's so meaningless to me. That's just like a contest of who stayed healthy. You know what I mean? So if you look at per game, like you said, Hollywood Brown was just almost unusable a lot of weeks until the very, very tail end of the year where he did turn it on. I think that the Bateman and Sammy Watkins stuff is actually better for him. I mean, asking Marquise Brown to be a number 1 receiver is not where he's going to win. He's going to win on less volume. He's going to win on more single coverage with more open space in the field. And so I think getting Bateman is actually better for him. So I feel much better about Hollywood actually this year than I did last year, even though they've added Sammy Watkins and Rashad Bateman. So yeah, I think at current ADP in season long, I think Hollywood is a buy. Like, I think we have him right now ranked 20 spots ahead of his ADP in season long.
I like that. I think that Marquise Brown is mostly DFS for me, and I was not in on Marquise Brown earlier this year. I think I had 1 share of him outside of best ball, but sitting there and looking at it, Will Fuller is a great example of a type of player that Hollywood Brown could be, especially if he goes to a situation as to where he's not the number 1. Now, is he ever going to see the volume that Will Fuller saw? No. Is he ever going to see the accuracy that Will Fuller saw from Deshaun Watson? Hell no. I mean, Deshaun Watson had a 70% completion rate, 70+% completion rate. So, Hollywood is definitely going to be more volatile, but seeing him in one-on-one coverage, I think he can dominate, and hopefully he gets some snaps out of slot. I believe Willie Snead did not resign there, so he can't ruin Hollywood Brown's life anymore. I love that.
It's good to dream. Look, I loved Marquise Brown going into last year because I just extrapolated what he did in his rookie season and said, all right, well, if he gets 5% more volume, if he gets 2% more volume, that's like 30, 40 more targets. My man's a wide receiver 1 because he's so explosive. He's going to score touchdowns. He's going to put up, high yards per reception. It's like Adam said, he's not a wide receiver 1. He's going to have weeks, I'm sure, that are going to be really good, but that's going to be Bateman's show. And that you're underselling Will Fuller. Will Fuller is a wide receiver 1 when healthy. Will Fuller is just unfortunately never healthy or apparently on drugs like last year. But Will Fuller is a really good wide receiver. He's a complete wide receiver. I don't know that Marquise Brown could actually compare to Will Fuller that way.
Yeah, he's actually a lot better with contested catches. I mean, he really reminds me of Jalen Waddle. I feel like they're very, very similar in multiple different ways as to where they can both go up and make catches. They both have the explosiveness. And, if Will Fuller could stay healthy, I think that he could have been one of the best receivers out there. I think he could be a top 5 dynasty wide receiver and top 5 redraft pretty easily. Now, Let's go to receivers with quarterbacks who don't pass much. We're going to see Chicago most likely roll out Justin Fields at some point, and they're going to run a lot of RPO. They're going to run a lot of different, obviously running plays, but plays to make sure that Justin Fields has time to get open. Last year, the offense tried to operate off of more of a either play action fake type series, which they did a lot less of this past year than what they did in like 2018 when they were successful doing it, and a lot more like quick hits. Like, oh, A-Rob's going out for an 8-yard hitch, 30 times a game, 40 times a game. So Allen Robinson, right? He might not see the volume. He might have a little bit more big play potential to an extent, and hopefully Justin Fields is a little more accurate than what we saw from Foles and from Trubisky. But Michael Thomas, right, might not see as much opportunity as what he's seen in the past either. So sitting there and looking at it, both players have kind of dropped in ADP, obviously. I mean, is either one of these guys somebody that you might reach for in hopes that they could either, return to form or give their previous form back in 2019? Or are both these players somebody that y'all want to pass on and just let somebody else take the risk of having a low volume wide receiver or lower volume than what you're used to seeing from them? I'm not saying they're going to be low volume by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, I think Michael Thomas, it's the lower volume is baked in. I think the bigger risk on Michael Thomas than the volume is catch rate. And the way that he used to win with Drew Brees was like literally like all-time world class, like the highest catch rate on high volume in NFL history. And with Jameis and Taysom Hill, some combo of that, it's obviously not going to be that. So if the routes that he was running with Drew Brees, which were like literally like 5 yards down the field on a slant or 6 yards down and turn around, if that's going to be the same thing, but his catch rate's going to go down, it's a problem. So that to me, it's more about the catch rate than the volume. Justin Fields, I think he's going to play early. Like, obviously, like, I don't believe any of the bullshit that Chicago's saying. He's going to play very, very early, if not week one. And I think we'll see a conservative, run-heavy attack out of the Bears at that point. So, yeah, these are two guys that I've been kind of passing on in best ball. Like, I'd rather have Keenan Allen. I'd rather have Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf. I'd probably rather have both the Dallas guys, Amari and CeeDee Lamb. Ooh. And then probably start to think about Michael Thomas and Allen Robinson once it gets to that kind of Terry McLaurin, DJ Moore, Mike Evans type of range.
Shane, where's the range landing for you? Are they falling that far down, or are you willing to take them in late second, early third? What are you thinking?
In where, redraft or dynasty? Well, it doesn't matter. The answer is no to both. I don't even know why I asked. No, I wouldn't touch it. But I also don't like. I mean, whatever. It's just whatever ethos or whatever. I don't like players on low volume offenses, wide receivers especially. I didn't realize that Chicago threw the ball as much as they did last year with Foles and Trubisky, and those were the only two they let play quarterback. Whoever played, it was bad. So, I mean, I guess in theory, Robinson might not be that bad off because even though they had a lot of volume last year, it was bad volume. And you would think Justin Fields and Andy Dalton, if he does start any games, is an improvement over Foles and Trubisky. I've never really been a big Michael Thomas guy either because he was so volume dependent, and he needed his catch rate to be outerworldly. So with Taysom and Jameis there, it's hard to see that. It's just really hard to see him getting 190 targets and then catching 90% of those balls.
So you taking A-Rob or Michael Thomas if they're both on the board and they fell far enough for you guys?
A-Rob.
Yeah, I think I would go Michael Thomas just because there's like some outcomes where Jameis like somehow throws for like 4,500 yards or something insane. You know what I mean? Like, that's just never happening for the Bears quarterbacks. Like at least there's like some chance Jameis just goes completely ham. I don't think it's likely, but at least there's some chance.
I'm nervous. I'm nervous for Justin Fields. Like his sack rate in college was crazy. I believe it was like a sack on every was it 2.36 per game or something like that. He had a sack on every 12 dropbacks. Chicago Bears offensive line was brutal last year, and we saw it. Like Mitch Trubisky was able to scramble a little bit, but both quarterbacks had 18 sacks. When it comes to Nick Foles and Trubisky, the only two quarterbacks that have been successful. I think there's like 17 quarterbacks, rookies, who have taken 36 sacks in the NFL, and since 2000, and 2 of them were successful. That was it. It was like Kyler Murray and Andrew Luck, and Andrew Luck's debatable. So sitting there and looking at it, they were all first, or 8 of them out of the. Oh no, it was 12 of them. 8 out of the 12 were first round picks. 2 out of the 12 were second round picks, and 2 out of the 12 were third round picks. So sitting there and looking at it, if Fields, who by the way has an issue with sacks, like he has trouble diagnosing blitzes, if he starts taking sacks off the bat, we could see a repeat of a Patrick Ramsey type player where he gets these what do they call it, fairy feet or whatever, and he doesn't keep his feet planted, doesn't deliver. So I don't know. I'm interested, but let's go ahead and hop on to somebody that actually
real quick.
Yeah.
Patrick Ramsey, dude, who was he drafted by?
Really?
You got to get over that, dude. Justin Fields is infinitely better prospect.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, don't worry about it. The difference is Justin Fields, like Mitch Trubisky, can scramble and he's very athletic, but Justin Fields is on another level, so he'll be okay.
All right, we'll see. Now, when it comes to Galladay and Sutton, right? These are 2 guys who are somewhat alpha receivers. They go up, they get the ball. However, both of them have terrible quarterbacks when it comes to doing that. I mean, Drew Lock was fine. If Drew Lock's a starter, I'm not worried about Sutton. But Teddy Bridgewater, he does not throw jump balls, right? Like, that just doesn't happen. When it comes to Daniel Jones, he does not throw jump balls, or at least well. So sitting there and looking at these 2 and their situation, which one would you rather have between these 2 guys? Because I feel like they're going right around the same area in ADP as well.
You keep naming guys that like I don't go out of my way to draft, and I probably would pass on both of them. And I mean, in all honesty, in every dynasty startup I've done this year, and even the best ball, I've only done like 5 or 6 best balls. I'm not a crazy best ball guy. Clearly, like I'm not. But even then, like I don't draft either. If that's the choices, I just skip them and I go somewhere else. But that's just me. If you're forced to make me pick a guy,
I'm not forcing you to do anything, Shane.
This
is all consensual.
Kenny Galladay, because Lord help me, I think Daniel Jones is a better quarterback than Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater. And he's not coming off a major knee injury. He's coming off a fake injury that he had because he didn't want to play for Detroit anymore. So I'll take Galladay.
How you feeling about that, Adam?
Yeah, I think there's outs with Sutton to Aaron Rodgers still, and so we have it pretty close. We have 62nd overall for Galladay and 70th overall for Sutton. We're below ADP on both. I think there's outs though for Sutton to still get Rodgers. Like I still don't see. I don't know. It's like when they passed on Justin Fields at 9th overall and took Patrick Surtain, it was like it felt to me like they still thought they had a pretty good chance to get Aaron Rodgers. So I think creating some stuff this early, if you're playing best ball or whatever, with Aaron Rodgers going to Denver and those outcomes is at least worth thinking about. If it stays the way it is, I'd probably prefer Galladay. I still think that Daniel Jones is not nearly as bad as he showed last year. And Jason Garrett is just a stone dunce, but I know he's still there. And so, I know the Giants have high hopes for the guys coming back on their offensive line and the pieces that they've added there over the last couple of years. And I think that would help Daniel Jones too if those guys actually come together. So I'll go with Galladay, but yeah, I think that the Denver stuff is worth considering with Aaron Rodgers' possibilities.
All right, so let's go ahead and just name a few guys and see if y'all would take it over these players. So Cooper Kupp.
Yes.
Yeah.
Take Cooper Kupp. Okay. What about? Let's go Deontay Johnson.
Yep.
I don't know, man. I don't know how I feel about Deontay Johnson. Like I see his stats, but then I'm like, dude drops everything in sight. And
he does.
Like yards per reception is like 3 yards, right? Like that's the air yards, like 3 yards per reception or something. I guess I should say Deontay though. I guess Deontay. Yes, Deontay. Big season with Ben.
Adam, obviously prior to the show, we were talking about how the update came out with like Matt Canada, right? He said he wants to do whatever Big Ben wants to do. And then all of a sudden he's like, but yeah, Art wants us to run the ball whenever we have to run the ball. And then right after that, like an hour later, Big Ben gets injured or whatever on the field. And he's like, getting checked out by the training staff and they're showing like the video highlight. And right behind Big Ben getting checked out by the training staff, Deontay Johnson just literally drops an easy pass, just goes straight through his hands. I'm like, oh, Deontay Johnson's gonna have another year. That's the highlight.
And you should look, and I'll say you shouldn't worry about drops, but when they become a worry, they really worry me because I generally don't care about drops. You know what I mean? You make fun of Jalen Reagor all the time, but when a dude drops as many passes as Deontay Johnson, then it starts to creep in the back of my head. So I know it's creeping in the back of his head because he's the one dropping them.
Yeah. All right. What about Tyler Lockett? Tyler Lockett or Galladay or Sutton?
Yeah. These are easy ones. I would take all these guys over Galladay and Sutton by like a lot.
Odell?
Definitely.
All right. Let's go a little bit deeper then. Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, that one's close. I probably still go Deebo, but definitely close.
Shane, Deebo?
I slide him in between Galladay and Sutton.
All right, we'll do one more. Let's see if I can break Adam down there. Let's go Curtis Samuel.
Yeah, you know.
Oh no, Antonio Brown. I know you're super low on Antonio Brown, aren't you?
I actually haven't even thought about him that much. Like, I think we're definitely above market on him because he's going super late, but you know, we have him somewhere like the 140 range. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, Curtis Samuel, I just want to be high on Washington, but I think it'd probably be a mistake to take him over Galladay or Sutton.
Okay. All right. We found that sweet spot. Now, we're sitting there, we're looking at Daniel Jones, and obviously I don't think he's going to do much to maximize Galladay's upside over Matt Stafford, right? Matt Stafford was probably like the perfect quarterback to go with him outside of maybe like an Aaron Rodgers-esque type player. Now, Fitzpatrick goes to Washington, right? And everybody's talking about how, you know, all of a sudden Fitzpatrick's going to unlock Terry McLaurin. And I sat there and I did a bunch of research, and I think that the only quarter or wide receiver who was less efficient with Ryan Fitzpatrick versus whoever he split the season with, because he split almost every season after like 2012, was Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson was the only one that was less efficient with him at quarterback versus his replacement. So obviously wide receivers, they thrive with Fitzpatrick. He gives them opportunities to go make plays. And obviously his stats will suffer from time to time, although he did have what I think the highest completion rate of his entire career, or maybe it was the highest quarterback rate of his entire career this past year. You know, Terry McLaurin seems to be somebody that could be undervalued. So does Ryan Fitzpatrick unlock McLaurin, or is this something where it's like, hey, like there's too many mouths to feed, quote unquote, which I hate that narrative. You know, is he going to end up dominating the targets? Is Ryan Fitzpatrick going to give him the opportunity? You think that De'Ami Brown and Curtis Samuel and Logan Thomas are going to take too much volume from him?
I mean, like you said, I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick is a maximizer for wide receivers. And I think a lot of it's just he knows situationally, and he also knows when to be aggressive. And like, a guy does not have to be open for Ryan Fitzpatrick to give him a chance. Like, he doesn't care if he throws interceptions. And I think that'll be good for Terry McLaurin. It's good for everybody. I mean, just give guys chances deep down the field, like throw the ball far down the field in single coverage and try to make good things happen. And I mean, I think Terry McLaurin's a pretty special player. So yeah, I took a lot of Terry McLaurin last year in redraft, and I'd be happy to take him again, probably after the Dallas guys. But I think Terry McLaurin probably before the Tampa guys for me.
I'll take it. I mean, Washington's defense is going to be very good this year. It's going to have very short field opportunities. So when you look at Dallas and the fact that they're going to have a lot more shootouts, I mean, that makes sense. Like, I like CeeDee Lamb slightly more than I like Terry McLaurin. I also like Amari Cooper, arguably in redraft at least. But yeah, I mean, Terry McLaurin for me, you know, couldn't end up being a smash play this year and easily top 10, possibly top 5. Shane, how are you feeling about that?
First things first, got to get myself off mute. No, yeah, we've seen Terry McLaurin excel with Alex Smith. Was it Kyle Allen that was playing there last year? A little bit of Dwayne Haskins, just absolute trash cans at quarterback. And Ryan Fitzpatrick doesn't need to be that much better to be that much better, and he is. He's that much better than them. So I'm all about Terry McLaurin. Curtis Samuel doesn't hurt him even a little bit. Logan Thomas was there last year. It didn't hurt him really. So there's no reason not to be all in on Terry McLaurin. And I would take Terry McLaurin over both Sutton and Golladay as well. Not even close. In case you were going to ask again, I don't know.
Come on, dude. Oh no. Obviously, it's a situation that should be exploited with McLaurin, and I still feel like he's going too late in drafts. I think he's probably one of the most underrated players in the top 4 or 5 rounds right now.
Well, you know why though? Because especially in Dynasty, I don't know if the same connotations hold with players, but in Dynasty, we have a hard time letting go of what we perceive as lower draft capital or an old wide receiver. And I understand when you're drafting rookies, you're looking at probabilities and you're looking at, well, this guy's hit rate, someone's with this profile, his hit rate isn't great, so don't draft him. But after McLaurin's done it for 2 straight years, he's already shown, okay, that doesn't matter. I'm actually a very good NFL wide receiver and I'm a very good fantasy receiver. It's still hard for us to just let go and say, you know what, I'm going to draft Terry McLaurin. He doesn't feel as sexy as some of the other guys.
No, he really doesn't. And I mean, sitting there and looking, I think 2019, he led the league in contested catch rate or contested catches. So not only can he make, deep play opportunities, but he can also go up and get the ball to an extent. Last year, he didn't have those type of opportunities because Alex Smith played, for part of the year, obviously. And yeah, it just wasn't there for him. But let's go ahead and let's stick with Washington. Tight ends, they seem to be like an argument every single year. Like we go in and we talk about the potential breakouts, who's going to be good, who's going to be bad, and blah, blah, blah. And I feel like Logan Thomas is kind of like just being accepted as a top 8 or so tight end, at least top 10, like minimum, right? And, growing up in Virginia Beach, like I'm heavy on Washington football. Like I love Washington football. I love watching it. And I love Logan Thomas. He played at Virginia Tech, been following for a long time. I think he's a great football player overall. But last year he had the highest percentage of snaps at any wide receiver or of any tight end at the wide receiver position, right? So he played outside. He played in the slot a whole ton. I think he was over 50% when it came to that. Now, we sit there and we look at it. They add Curtis Samuel. They add De'Ami Brown, which we already talked about. We could see, Gibson possibly get a higher percentage of receiving opportunities in this offense this upcoming year. So looking at it, if he does get moved to tight end and Fitzpatrick doesn't utilize the tight end like we talked about, Gesicki's like the only one that he used. I think Scott Chandler, had 2 decent seasons with him. But is Logan Thomas a locked and loaded top 12 option with all these receiving options coming in and with Ryan Fitzpatrick not utilizing tight end? Are they still going to be able to move him outside? Is he definitely locked and loaded as a top 12 tight end, or is it, at this point just expected and we don't look that much into it because of what he did last year?
Well, yeah, I would just say, like, I'm hesitant to say Ryan Fitzpatrick doesn't throw to the tight end I don't have it in front of me without looking through who his tight end was the whole time. Like maybe he hasn't had someone as good as Logan Thomas is. You know what I mean? I think that top 12 is fine for Logan Thomas. I agree with you that we're lower than market on Logan Thomas right now. We have him around 100th overall, behind Goddard, behind Noah Fant, behind Hawkinson. I think that Logan Thomas, though, is a very, very good player. And like just having a tight end who's capable of catching 8-9 passes in a game is just, I mean, most of these guys are just never going to do that. I mean, they're just not. And so I would probably swing for the fence a little bit more on Tyler Higbee than I would on Logan Thomas and try to take a shot on Higbee, recapturing some of that late 2019 form. But I think Logan Thomas is fine as a top 12 tight end.
Shane, how you feeling about Logan Thomas?
I'm just looking at Ryan Fitzpatrick's history of tight end ones, and he's really had some really bad tight ends. Like these are dudes I've never even heard of, like David Martin, Sean Nelson, Reggie Kelly, who I don't even think that's a real person. That's such a made up like Madden, like, you know what I mean? Like he just has the nondescript like helmet and the jersey with nothing on it. Anyway,
I think he had Delaney Walker for a season or 2.
Did he?
Yeah, he completed 43 passes. Delaney Walker. He had OJ Howard.
Okay, but he should have done better with Delaney Walker. Yeah, I think Curtis Samuel, Diami Brown, those are ancillary pieces. So yeah, they're gonna eat into Logan Thomas's shares because he's an ancillary piece. But can he be a top 12 tight end? Well, yeah, because if you have any talent really, and you're a starter, you can be a top 12 tight end just about any week. Anyone can do it. Can he be a top 5 tight end? No, not a chance in the world. Which I think is more important. So like Adam said, swinging for the fences, that's something that I like to go for, especially at a position like tight end, because the floor is 0. So what's the difference if I get a guy that's scoring 0 or I get a guy that's scoring 6 points a week? Let me try to get the guy that might crack a couple weeks at 25, 30 points. I might even take Gerald Everett over him. I wouldn't have to. But I prefer someone like Gerald Everett over.
I was actually going to bring him up.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to step out there.
No, you're good. I mean, Russell Wilson loves his tight ends in the red zone. So, we could see that happen. But, I mean, at the same time, there's not a big physical receiver up there in Washington. So maybe Logan Thomas is the red zone receiver and Ryan Fitzpatrick, focuses on him. He did with Gesicki over the past 2 years. So it's an interesting situation. I think the Logan Thomas needs to be a little bit more debated than I feel like, people are giving him credit for. Or I guess the opposite of that. I feel like he's being handed a top 12 tight end position. I just feel like he could be a lot more volatile. So let's go ahead and let's close this episode out on one more piece where every single year we talk about tight ends that are going to break out, right? Like last year was Jonnu Smith. And I mean, it's just always tight end after tight end. They're going to break out. And the reality is like the years 2 through year 5 are the most productive of a tight end's career. The most being year 3 because they don't stay healthy for very long. They end up, incurring injuries after year 4 or 5 or so. And then, it takes time to learn the position prior to year 2, obviously spending their rookie year doing it. So looking at it, we'll start with Adam. Is there a tight end that you think can actually crack that mold this year? And if so, how high do you think they can get?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned Tyler Higbee. I mean, I think Tyler Higbee, there's not many tight ends who can do what you saw Tyler Higbee do over the final 5-6 weeks of the 2019 season. Now Gerald Everett is gone. Now Matthew Stafford is in, and I think we'll see a much different game plan from Sean McVay this year now that he got rid of Jared Goff and has Matthew Stafford. So I think Tyler Higbee has definitely a big time chance to be top 5. I'd throw Mike Gesicki into the mix as well as just like a freak athlete. Beyond that though, no, I don't. I mean, like you said, I mean, every year there's going to be guys. I could make a case for Irv Smith. I can make a case for Anthony Ferkser. I can make cases for these guys, but it's really, really thin, and I wouldn't really try to do so.
Shane, how you feeling about that?
Yeah, he's right. I mean, that he's just. I hate the tight end position so much because we talk about guys like Anthony Ferkser every year or Gary Barnidge. They're literally the same dude for the last 20 years. I'm going to cheat. I'll grab Evan Ingram. I know he had a great rookie season, and since then things ain't been grand, but he's someone that you can still get pretty cheap. So I'll go with Evan Ingram. And just looking at the fantasy scoring from tight ends last year, I'm trying to just look at names. Maybe I don't remember someone. Maybe there's a guy that I'm not thinking of, right? No, there's no such thing. Gerald Everett, Zach Ertz, and Evan Ingram, really. And they're kind of all retreads. There's no one hot and sexy for you. I'm sorry.
Just saying, man. Just saying. Sitting there and looking at it.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Who? The Rams guy, the rookie, Jordan Harris, Jacob Harris.
Jacob Harris. He is so hot right now.
Twitter just discovered him over the last 3 days, and apparently he's the next big thing. So yeah, Jacob Harris. This will be the only place I'll put a claim in on him because I don't believe him. But sure, Jacob Harris.
now you have receipts, Shane. Now you have receipts, right?
Yeah.
Now I was sitting there and obviously Irv Smith Jr. and Shane loves vacated targets. Shane is that's his favorite stat in the entire world. He's the vacated target king. So obviously with Irv Smith Jr.'s catch rate and 37 vacated targets, if you apply the catch rate to those vacated targets, the 37, it would have put Irv Smith Jr. at, I think, tight end 3 last season. So that's where I expect him to finish up this season since Kyle Rudolph's gone. And guess what? Kyle Rudolph went to Evan Ingram. So, I think his targets will probably be cut in half because that's exactly the amount of targets that Irv Smith Jr. had. So,
but Tyler Conklin's there. Mike Zimmer just told me this week that Tyler Conklin's role is actually going to expand.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. Adam, do you believe that? Do you think Irv Smith Jr.'s role is going to expand, or do you believe the coach speak at that point?
His role will expand, but I do think that they will use Tyler Conklin more than people think. I mean, even last year when Kyle Rudolph didn't play, Tyler Conklin was playing a ton. I believe that he might have actually out-targeted Irv Smith.
I think he did. I think I heard that.
That Kyle Rudolph missed. So, no, I mean, I think that Irv Smith's role is obviously going to expand. But, yeah, I think Tyler Conklin is going to play more than people think and be a bigger factor than people think.
All right, so I rescind my pick, and I'm going to go with Foster Moreau. Jason wins out. Foster Moreau is a beast in the red zone. Foster Moreau is going to finish up as a top 3 tight end this season. And that's not even a hot take. That's just me being completely honest. That's definitely hot.
2 years ago. 2 years ago when Foster Moreau was coming out of college, was he undrafted? I forget. He either
4th round pick, I believe.
4th round. So he was that, before Waller became the thing, everybody was all over Foster Moreau.
Really?
In the offseason. He was
part of Twitter at that
going to be the thing. And then we all discovered Darren Waller all at the same time. And then he was going to become the thing. And then he actually hit. And anyone you follow on Twitter that ever claimed Darren Waller is just insufferable about it. That's just felt like blasting Twitter for some reason. So apparently I shared that.
I had no idea that Foster was ever a thing. I thought I was the only person who knew about him. But
okay, so you've been on Twitter long enough. You should know everyone is a thing at some point or another. Like you can find there's almost like Kerryon Johnson was huge. Like
I was a thing.
Scott was huge. Look,
like 2 months.
Wendell Smallwood was a thing like 4 years ago. We get bored in the summer on Twitter.
God, I remember Wendell Smallwood. I remember him. He was great. You guys remember Bryce Love? He was a thing at one point.
Yes.
Anyways, let's go ahead and get out of here. I know Adam wants to go watch some basketball. We're running a little bit over an hour at this point, so let's get everybody closed up and out of here. Adam, where can we find you? What you got going on? Where can the people find your content, all the special activities you do?
Yeah, no, I tweet about most stuff I'm working on. You can just follow me on Twitter at Adam Levitan and just go to establishedrun.com to find all our rankings and articles and stuff like that. It is up on there.
Shane, what you got, man?
Apparently I'm on this show on Wednesday nights. Dynasty Trades HQ at Shane is the Worst. Find my writings at DLF. Oh, and find my YouTube show, Mannequin Chill. On what is that on? That's DLF YouTube channel.
Oh, and youtube.com/fantasy intervention on Tuesday nights with Jake.
Oh, Tuesday nights, Dynasty Intervention. You got me all screwed up because it's Wednesday. I don't know what's going on. I forgot that we just did a show yesterday. That's my bad.
No, you're good. You're good. Y'all can come check us out over there at fantasyintervention.com. Once again, that's fantasyintervention.com. We are actually releasing our rankings page coming up next week. I'm very excited about that. We also have a series going out, Stabilize Your Future, talking about dynasty quarterbacks, and that's even single quarterback leagues. We dive into each quarterback and talk about what kind of, outlook they have with their careers, with their situations, and if it could change, or if we're looking at something where they're going to be, their situation is going to be reliable and stable for years to come. So yeah, go check that out. Of course, you guys can find us at youtube.com/fantasy intervention. Once again, that's youtube.com/fantasy intervention. Make sure you guys go hit subscribe. And you guys can go find us on Facebook, facebook.com/fantasy intervention, and go check out our group, Fantasy Football Discussion. We have 24,000 active members. I'm sure a bunch of y'all are in here in the chat checking it out today. It's pretty insane. We got some big things coming up with that, including a website that should be built here very shortly. Very excited about that one as well. Pretty much covered it all. Go check out our Twitter page at @joinourcircle_. Once again, that's @joinourcircle_. And you guys can find me at @FF_intervention. Whew. Thank you guys for listening. And thank you all for letting us intervene with your fantasy football life. We're out.